Good morning to everybody. Nice to see you there. Thank you very much for coming along and watching this video. You're watching me, Jennifer Kirk, here on the Jennifer Kirk channel, and today we're going to be doing a box opening and review on a particular item from the Bachmann catalogue, and I've got it here. It's catalogue number 37-256, and like I said before, very much a bread and butter model. This particular model has been in the Bachmann stable since possibly as far ago as 1997-98. It was one of the early releases in their Blue Ribbon range, and it replaced a 33-XXX catalogue range 16-ton steel Mineral Wagon, which for its day was probably alright, but compared to this was actually utter garbage. But this model, when it came out, it really did blow a lot of people away, and pretty much Bachmann have wrapped up the 16-ton Mineral Wagon market. There was quite a lot of these made. My brain is now struggling to recall the actual figure, but certainly we're probably looking in the region of 250,000 plus of these, if not more, were built over the lifetime of the production on British Rail. And also they kind of stemmed from a wartime wagon built for the Ministry of War Transportation, which is more of a slope-sided design. And also I believe that they were based a little bit on some wagons that had been built for the SNCF in France. But certainly they did a really good job of replacing the wooden-bodied wagons that had been so prevalent up till then. Much more longevity to them, lasted a lot more punishment, and also probably more importantly for the railways, it enabled them to carry a much higher payload, which meant you could move much more goods per length of train. Now, when Bachmann tooled these up, they were actually really thoughtful, because there's a lot of variety to the different 16-ton Mineral Wagons that were produced over the years. Some with, some without top flap doors. This is a later bodied wagon, so we can see that the top flap doors on this are not in there. And Bachmann have achieved this through very clever use of slides in the moulds. Another area that they've actually tooled up for different varieties with are the ends of the wagon here. We've got a tipping end door, and they did a pressed steel, and also this version, which is kind of ribbed in this way. The careful use of the slides has enabled them to produce both of these varieties. So in combination with the with or without top flap doors, there's an awful lot of different variation that they can produce and bring to market, and they can do wagons that represent from the very early BR period right through into the pretty much early 1990s, where latterly some of the last remaining wagons were transferred into the Engineers fleet, and Bachmann have actually produced a model of those in the Engineers olive green livery. This shows a bauxite fitted wagon from probably 1950s, 1960s period on British Rail, but British Rail was actually quite slow to re-stencil up with the tops code these wagons, so it's quite possible that in a battered and rusty condition this wagon could have persisted in this particular livery right through into the late 70s and possibly even early 80s. Certainly I've seen photographs that show wagons in some quite old liveries, very battered and bruised, that hadn't really experienced a trip through the paint shops for decades. These really were hard-working frontline wagons for British Rail. Now, what's interesting with this is that whereas a lot of wagons have been released with the vacuum cylinder and in the bauxite livery as a vacuum braked wagon, it would appear that this particular one is modelling a through-piped wagon. So that's a wagon which would have had a vacuum connection on either end and would have allowed the vacuum line to pass through to the next wagon, but it would have been a pure pass-through. It would not have actually acted upon this wagon. And quite confusingly, BR had this habit of painting the piped wagons in the same livery for easy recognition as the fully fitted ones. So I suppose, law of averages, it was possible for an entire train to be made up that would have looked at first glance to be a fitted train, but actually be composed entirely of through piped wagons, which is probably something that the train staff would have had to have watched out for. We've got the brake shoes there do match up with the treads on the wheels, and we've got brakes on both sides, but if this isn't actually just a defect in the production and assembly process and is actually modelling a through piped wagon, that is in some degrees a bit of an extravagance. What I've noticed on some of the grey liveried unbraked wagons is that they tend to have different brake gear, and that is something else that Bachmann, through very clever use of interchangeable parts, have allowed to be tooled up. So you can get an awful lot of variety as well in the brake gear. But here we've got 4 brake shoes acting on every single wheel face, and handbrake lever, which is correctly handed. I'm just looking at that. In fact, I have a feeling that the brake gear, let's see now, I could be wrong, but actually no, that's it. I think the brake gear is correct, but it's actually very difficult to tell on this. But certainly the level of detail on this is pretty well put together. We've got some very, very good flanges on the underframe there, very, very slender bits of injection moulding, and despite the age of the mould for this wagon, I don't really see any fuzziness, any loss of clarity at the edges, or indeed any flash. And certainly it's the case that Bachmann are knocking these out, a few with different livery variants with different running numbers, every single year. And it may be that they're quite quietly replacing moulds as and when they wear out. They're certainly not sweating those moulds to the point where they produce a poorer quality model. The prices on these over the years have gone up. When they were first introduced, they were around the £4 to £4.50 mark. They're now going for around the £11, £12 mark, but still offer a reasonably good value for money wagon for your wagon fleet. And certainly I've got loads of these. It's one of the types of wagons which I've gone out of my way to get pretty much nearly all of the different versions that Bachmann have produced over the years, and that, believe it or not, comes to around 85 of these examples, all with completely different running numbers and slight livery and side variations. And it means you don't have to bother with actually renumbering these wagons particularly. If you hunt around, you can get the factory applied different running numbers from a variety of sources, and I believe there's probably now over 100 different identities of these wagons that Bachmann themselves have produced either in the main catalogue or in special commissions for some retailers. For example, Model Zone, TMC and Hattons have all produced special commission versions of these wagons. Anyway, I hope this has been very informative to you. Don't forget to like this video, share it too, and I'm Jenny Kirk, and I'll be here all day, every day, with a whole host of great videos for you to watch. So don't forget to look back through the channel at all the stuff that we've been doing up till now. Anyway, until next time, it's been great to have you along. You take very good care of yourself. And this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying bye for now.